Neil, I can't think of another case of back-to-back interviews, at least not this close. It seems like only a couple weeks ago, because I believe it was, that we were here talking about a book you wrote, and now we're talking about another book you wrote. Not to mention the other books you've written since we've talked, the last few years. You're a maniac, you're a fool for love, which is why you wrote last time we talked about Christmas movie ultimate trivia book, and now we're back with the rom-com ultimate trivia book. What's going on, man? How are you? What's with all the writing, and why do you love romantic comedies so much?
Good question. Well, I'm so glad to be back here. It's always fun to hang out and talk movies. Definitely a madman for sure. I haven't been sleeping too much, working on the next project. So, I just love working. I love making things and creating things. So, if I'm, ever not working or I'm, sitting idle, that's not good for me. So, I have to be working on something. And these two books I did in tandem. I was contracted to do the rom-com book first. They said, "Hey, we want to do a Christmas book. Can you get it done before the rom-com one? Do you need it earlier?" And I said, "Sure." So I did that one first, and then did this one. So that was fun. And then, speaking of rom-coms, I've always been a fan of them ever since I was a kid. I think they're so fun. I know some people might knock them for saying they're formulaic, but I think that's kind of where the charm is. They're sort of I was saying this the other day that a rom-com is sort of like a really good recipe, or a good batch of ingredients, excuse me, that you give someone. So like everyone gets the same ingredients, same formula and everything, but it's fun seeing how the filmmakers change that formula and make something different from the same ingredients. So I just love rom-coms. And then my wife and I had a rom-com themed wedding. We got married in an old vintage movie theater in the Chicago suburbs. And the wedding opened with a trailer of all the most famous rom-com moments that my friend edited together. And couldn't have had it, any other way, I should say. So yeah, just love rom-coms.
I think I know the answer to this, but which theater was it?
It was the Tivoli Theater in
The
Downers
tip.
Grove.
Yep, I remember that. Well, I wasn't there, but I know the Tivoli very well.
Mhm.
My dad used to live right around the corner from there, so yeah, good old Downers Grove. And something we share in common, sir. We're both romantics. We unapologetically love
Mhm.
rom-coms, and we both got married in movie theaters.
Oh, you
I
did
got
too. That's awesome.
Yes, the Pickwick in Park Ridge, and our
Oh yeah.
our themed wedding was Better Off Wed, named after, of course, Better Off Dead, one of the great rom-coms.
I love that.
Um, yes, I even sculpted the little hamburger people to be our wedding toppers. Yeah, that was fun. But yeah, so we're going to talk about the rom-com ultimate trivia book, but we're also going to talk about, as we do on this show, a movie, a centerpiece film, and we're going to discuss what I consider to be sort of like the Avengers of rom-coms,
That's a good way to put it.
2003's Love Actually.
That's a great way to put that movie. Yeah, it totally is. And Richard Curtis, I mean, the writer director, he's responsible for so many famous rom-coms, so many great rom-coms, and what a great person to weave all these storylines together.
Yeah, he's sort of I would say he's like the Kevin Feige, and then Hugh Grant is his Robert Downey Jr. to
Yes.
further torture this metaphor. Um, but it's funny. I guess we could start off with I saw the movie. It's become a kind of a Christmas tradition, strangely enough, for the last several years. But this past Saturday, my wife and I went to go see it on the big screen at the Auditorium Theater in Chicago. The Chicago Philharmonic did a thing where they performed the score while the movie is actually going on. So that was really cool. I've done a couple of those movie events for different films, and it's always great to see. But I was reminded of how powerful the score for Love
Mm.
Actually is. Mostly people think of like the pop songs, the needle drops, but the original music is quite something, and it's very unique. Um, what was your first encounter, I guess, with Love Actually?
For me, it was freshman year of college, University of Iowa. I believe it was 2003, and I was on the performing arts floor of the dorm room, the Courier dorm room, and so we had a lot of people in different forms of arts, whether it was band, dance, visual art, acting, filmmaking, like for me and some others. And I just remember, we had a small room of one of the tenants, and a bunch of dudes all gathered in this one room, like maybe 15, 16 guys. Maybe like there might have been one girl there who was like a girlfriend of someone, but it was all these guys. Someone's like, "Hey, the girl from Bennett like Beckham's in this new movie," and and we got to see it, Keira Knightley. And so, yeah, we all huddled in, loved the movie, or all just sitting around watching a rom-com. And I'd always, been a huge Anglophile, and it was one of the reasons that that I wanted to go study in England, which I was able to do my sophomore year. And I lived in London and studied film there, and it was just like a great way of showing me, the world of England, and especially at Christmas time, the romance. It's not like the movie, at least it wasn't for me when I was there, but it was fun to kind of dream of it being that way. And so, yeah, that was my first, introduction to the movie. And like you said, the score is so good. It's just like you said, it's like the Avengers or the Harry Potter of rom-coms. I mean, you just have like every great British actor is in this movie, and a few American ones as well. And yeah, I immediately fell in love with it. Watch it every year for Christmas. It's sort of the ultimate rom-com, really. I mean, you have like any storyline you could think of is in this movie, all the different tropes. So it's kind of fun to have all that put together.
It's funny, and we can talk about this in a bit because I want to keep things positive for a while.
Yep.
But I was talking to my wife about there's a backlash against Love Actually. Maybe you've heard about this. A lot of people hate it,
Yeah,
and
they do. Yeah.
there's been sort of this modern reassessment. I mean, it came out like 22 years ago or 21 years ago now, but there's been sort of a modern reassessment of the film, and she couldn't believe it when I told her. She's like, "How could anybody hate this movie?" I'm like, "They can." And I was in preparation for this interview today. I was scrolling Twitter, which you should never do, or
Yeah, right.
X, and I found the Avengers of Love Actually hate threads about this film, and I might read some of it to give some context because there's some folks out there who might be in the same camp that we are, and my wife is, and I assume yours as well. How can you hate this movie? And other people who are gonna be like, how could you watch this movie? But I think the answer for me, very simply to that second question, is it is a yes, it's a big corporate Universal Pictures, Anglophile, as you mentioned, uh, love letter to love. Gag me with a spoon,
Hmm.
but it comes off as sincere. It doesn't play out exactly the way you think it's going to, where everybody ends up happy or everyone gets what they want. It really is sort of a nuanced look at different kinds of relationships, at least as vis-a-vis 2003 when it came out. And it's a fun kind of a cozy blanket of a movie, and I try and put myself into the head of someone who could watch this and not get anything out of it, and I can't relate.
Yeah, I mean, it's really hard not to enjoy the movie. I mean, I feel like there's such a huge movement now of looking at movies from the past, especially ones that maybe weren't part of the generation that's doing it, and nitpicking everything. As I said, the rom-coms are certainly formulaic in different respects, and this one, like you said, has so many different storylines. Not everyone is happy at the end of the movie. There's some really heartbreaking things in this movie, but I feel like I could go back to any rom-com ever that anyone says they love, and pick out something that is problematic or is weird or what doesn't have room today to be real. And it's sort of like, almost, I'm really bad with analogies, but I feel like rom-coms of all ages are sort of like food here in America sometimes. Like, that there's always going to be a little bit of high fructose corn syrup, and you could find it in any rom-com, and it's not great for you, but like you can get over it if that's the only option. But anyway, I think, yeah, I could nitpick anything. I know probably what all the comments are about, and when I was interviewing some people of like, oh, what's your favorite rom-com? Which one is overrated? I'd say like 8 out of 10 was Love Actually. So I'm not really sure where the vitriol is coming from, but it's okay.
Wait, let me just say, 8 out of 10 people said Love Actually was overrated, or that it was their favorite rom-com.
Most of the people who said what's the overrated rom-com, a lot of it was Love Actually. Yeah,
Man,
I
I
know.
I don't get it. Did you probe deeper? Did you say, who hit you?
Yeah, I should have. Yeah, I think it's just, I feel like it's one of those movies where it's low hanging fruit, right? I mean, it's one of those pop culture things. It's like, well, everyone else loves it. I'm just gonna hate it and be contrarian about it. And yeah, like some of the characters, sure, like I guess you could say, I'm sure they're going to bring up the cue card scene with Silent Night and Keira Knightley and everything. And like, okay, like, yeah, if this was real life, it would be a little weird, I suppose. But, she gave him one kiss or whatever. But it's a movie, like it's a rom com. There's been so many crazy things done in rom coms over the years that are far and wide worse than that. And you just happen to call it out because it's such a popular movie. So. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean the one I think the top of this thread that I was reading about was David, the Hugh Grant character, who's the freshly minted.
Mm.
I mean, we basically see him on the first day of the job as Prime Minister of England, and he develops a crush on Natalie, who's she's one of the I don't even one of the assistants at 10 Downing Street,
Hmm.
and it's complicated because he's kind of fallen hard, but he realizes there's a power imbalance in the whole. I think because this is post Clinton, there's
Right.
definitely an awareness on the part of Richard Curtis that this relationship is inappropriate. And yes, they do, spoiler alert, end up together at the end, which some people might say, well, what about this? What I would say is folks who criticize that, I think, are missing a crucial scene in the film where he goes to his primary executor or executive assistant, whatever, and says, yeah, please don't read anything into this, but if you could just reassign Natalie, I'd appreciate it. And there's no tearful conversation. There's no, power play or anything. It's just, yeah,
Hmm.
he elects not to see her again until she sends him a Christmas card and says, I'm sorry about whatever happened because there was an incident with the president of the United States, played perfectly by Billy Bob Thornton.
Yeah.
And it's like a 3-minute role, but it's just so spot on. But she apologizes for an indiscretion that she wasn't even responsible for, and then she says that she loves him, and so he says, you know what, I'm just going to take a chance, take a chance on love, as they say, and really memorable scene where he takes his head of security out on the long road of houses to try and find Natalie.
In the
I don't
dodgy
know,
end.
in the dodgy end. I don't know why he couldn't have found where she lived. Help me out with that. Is that a hole, Neil? Is that a plot hole?
I guess it could be a plot hole, but I think it wouldn't be as exciting if he didn't go and knock on everyone's door. So I'm totally in agreement with you. I mean, I think a lot of these things, a lot of the plot lines, you hear the Cliff Note version of it, and of course you're gonna be like, oh, that's really problematic. Prime Minister and the food services girl getting into it, but he knew it was wrong, so he was holding back. He, like you said, he reassigned her. She's the one who made the move and said, "I'm yours," and then he said, "Okay." And he's in obviously a big position, but they make a huge deal to talk about the fact that he's a single prime minister that's like never really happened before. And then you just have this nice moment with Emma Thompson before the show when he sneaks in. You can
Oh,
tell that he comes from like a normal family, like Emma Thompson, like a middle class possibly. He's not like a super rich prime minister, and it's like good that he met someone who also is maybe slightly lower than him, but like of the same ilk, and is going to keep him grounded. And he didn't meet like a celebrity that he fell in love with or something like that. So I totally agree with you, though. I think most of the answers to these questions are in the movie for the most part, and I think yeah, you found one of them right there.
so there are all of these intersecting stories, and that's another thing I've heard is like, oh, all these people just happen to know each other. I'm like, yeah, because people have giant friend groups, and it's not often that a movie will look at how all of them intersect. But if you were to take, the 20 people that and just like film them, yes, they're going to run into each other
Right,
and
right.
and have relationships and problems. And I think it's yeah, I'm trying to think of if there's any major problems that I have with the movie as just as a film. And I feel like it's pretty tight. I was very conscious of that watching it on the big screen because I'm like noticing things I hadn't seen before and whatnot, and just really being conscious of how tight the script is. And I don't know how long it took Curtis to write this or if he had a team behind him, but it is pretty magical.
Yeah, it is pretty magical. His wife is one of his script editors that kind of reads his scripts and gives opinions and everything, and they've been working together for many, many years. But there's so many things. I mean, they cut out some things too. Like one of my favorite facts is Rowan Atkinson's part is called Rufus. He's the one who works in the shop, and I've always loved his character because he always came off as sort of a reluctant guardian angel. Like he's almost trying to get Alan Rickman caught when he's getting the necklace. He's like holding him up so long that by the time Emma Thompson comes, she should have found him and called him on it. But then he does the thing where he helps Charlie, or not Charlie, excuse me. He helps Liam Neeson's kid,
Sam.
Sam. Thank you. I'm thinking about the Santa Claus since the last time we talked. He's helping Sam, get through security. And one of my favorite facts about the movie is that, in the script originally, he was a guardian angel because it's a Christmas movie. who was making influences over the characters, but they pulled a lot of that back and just kind of made him like a very interested bystander instead of a guardian angel. But I think it comes off as a guardian angel, which is why I like it. Like he winks at the kid or whatever, he puts on his hat, and just kind of a fun. I mean, you get Christmas movies that have Santa and guardian angels all the time, so like why not? You know?
I think, and maybe I had learned this from talking to you or something, but I think I found that fact out recently. And so watching it again this weekend, you can definitely see where that you can read that into it without having a scene where he's, Clarence and It's a Wonderful Life being assigned to go down to help people at Christmas time. It just works in your imagination, which is a lot of fun. Speaking of the airport, that's another. I think this is how I'm framing this conversation: is the people who hate Love Actually, what are their complaints and why are they wrong? Um, Another thing was the 9/11 thing. I can't believe they have a movie 2 years after the Twin Towers fell about a dad helping his kid like evade airport security, and there's that opening line about the Twin Towers.
Mhm.
It's one of the first lines in the movie, and I remember being kind of shocked the first time I saw the film because, again, Hugh Grant's character is narrating, Heathrow Airport, talking about, people reconnecting and coming in and meeting from all over the world. And then he says, when the planes hit the Twin Towers, the messages, to my knowledge, weren't of, revenge or hatred, but they were of love. And I just remember, because this might have been one of the first films after that to really kind of address what had happened head on. And when I heard that phrase, there was something triggered in me like, whoa, this is a rom-com. This is the opening 3 minutes of a 2+ hour movie. What are we doing here? But especially in subsequent viewings, you realize just how powerful that message is. And oddly, every time I hear that line, I'm kind of projected, into onto one of those planes and like being part of one of those phone calls and imagining that kind of heart-wrenching thing, but also that ultimate final expression of love. And whether or not that was meant to work on the audience that way, or if it's just a fleeting kind of, hey, let's be topical. It's one of the reasons that this movie cannot be written off as pure fluff.
Yeah, and I love the opening and the closing. All those people in the beginning and the end are all real people. They had like eight cameras set up at Heathrow Airport. We're filming really real interactions of people, seeing their loved ones or coming home, and then they would rush after them with release forms to sign to say, "Hey, can we use this footage for a movie?" So I think that's kind of fun too. That's real people and real emotions. And yeah, like you said, I think I don't know. The thing that this movie does so well is it could follow the normal formula, but you're getting infidelity, you're getting divorce, you're getting mourning, you're getting new love, you're getting sort of like the ridiculous comedy angle of it, like from the early 2000s with Colin, which is kind of fun. Which I know that's another one I'm sure people wrote about, like why does he talk about women and he wants to go to the U.S. and sleep around? He has a backpack full of condoms or whatever. And I was like, American Pie came out a few years before this. It's just a little, whatever, like deal with it. But I think there's so many sweet things, and I almost find what Richard Curtis does. It's one of my favorite stories that I don't think gets talked about enough. But I think the cutest meet cute is the one that initially, to some people when they watch it, comes off as maybe the most rash, which is Martin Freeman, as stand-ins for like a softcore porn. And I just, or whatever it is, could be just a movie with a lot of sex in it, but I just love that dynamic between them. They're both really wholesome people. They're professionals. They don't care like what they're doing. They're like getting to know each other. And what a sweet ending to that movie when he finally gets the courage, or he thinks he's going to have the courage to say something. And she says, all I want for Christmas is you. And I don't know. I think this is really sweet. And, it could have been another inner office romance, but it was like a unique spin on it and something that we hadn't seen before. And also, it features probably my favorite acting choice in the movie. Second favorite acting choice. It's where they're simulating sex, and the AD comes over and he's like, "Hey, I just want to let you know, the director wants you to like cup her breasts a little bit different or whatever." And it's like such an awkward scene already, and you're like kind of like feeling like, "Oh my god, this is so awkward." And Martin Freeman, luckily this is a video medium here. Martin Freeman gives like my favorite look, and I every time I see it, it's like I point at it like Leo DiCaprio in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. He goes like he like thinks about it, and then he like digests it, and he goes, "Okay, I'm gonna keep going now." And it's like just that little like, okay, I'm almost like a cyborg. I just love it, and I just think it's a really funny moment.
Yeah, and that's it's sweet. And you can really think about what's going on with these characters, because if they are just body doubles or stand-ins professionally, I mean, she's has no problem taking off her shirt and having her, part let the kids go out of the room, folks. Can you massage the nipples?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
That kind of a thing. She's like totally cool with it. And in a way, it's sort of sad because she is just, a body in the industry, but she hasn't given up on, possibly meeting someone. And you wonder if she's met anybody else like our Martin Freeman character. I can never remember their names because I think they kind of get the
It's
short shrift.
it's
Is it
Judy,
Jim? Is it Judy
Judy,
and Jim?
Judy and Jack.
Jack, right? Okay.
Yeah,
Jim
so I
was
think
Jim was his character from The Office,
Jim was the
or
office, and I think it's just Judy. She goes, "You can call me," or it's just Judy, and he goes, "Okay, just Judy." And I think I put both of the names in the book actually because this is one of those ones where I could have written 100 questions and I was only allowed 10, and it was so hard because there's so many different characters. Like, what are you supposed to do? And yeah, I'll figure out the name here while we're talking. But I just love that pairing. I think it's such a sweet story. And I don't know, they just perform it so well, both of them.
this isn't going to be a gotcha question. It's something I genuinely want to know because I don't have an answer. Is there a weak pairing or relationship in Love Actually?
Oh, that's a great question. I'm trying to go through them in my head right now. I mean, you got let's see. I mean, Colin Firth is really great with Aurelia. That one's classic. You have, I mean, Emma Thompson, Alan Rickman's is heartbreaking. That one's good. So I will say this. So I don't know if it's weak. It's one of those moments where I know you've seen Saving Private Ryan.
Yeah.
And I always call this the Saving Private Ryan moment, right? Or even further, like the To Kill a Mockingbird moment. So ever since I've read To Kill a Mockingbird and I've seen the movie, every time you watch the movie, you just hope that Atticus Finch is going to he's going to win the case, and he never does. And every time you get there, you're like, he's going to win. Like that's the great argument, and he doesn't. You're like, oh, this is disappointing. Same thing with Saving Private Ryan. You want Colonel, or not Colonel, but you want Private Upham to go and save
Oh,
his fellow soldier, and he chickens out and he doesn't, and then every time he dies, and you're like, oh god, I thought he was going to do it this time. So same thing with this movie. You think Laura Linney is not going to answer her phone to her brother because she's perfect with Rodrigo, and she does every time, and you're so disappointed. I know that's one moment everyone hates, and even my wife who works in special ed, she's like, I understand for the plot point him calling, but like they wouldn't probably let him have access to the phone that much. But anyway, a story about that moment. Laura Linney for 20 years would get stopped on the street all the time saying, I felt so bad. You should have ended up with him. I can't believe they did you dirty. And then she made a joke like, I got to kiss him for hours one day while we were filming. So that was a win. And then in the sort of the sequel, the unofficial sequel they did for charity for Red Nose Day, they gave her a new relationship with Patrick Dempsey, McDreamy. So it kind of worked out for her. But yeah.
what was he doing, a residency or something in London or in the hospital?
I guess so. Yeah. I'm curious if they made him a doctor too, I guess. But yeah, I just thought, I guess if there was a weak, not necessarily a weak one, but it's one that you want to work out. But I think, I don't know, that's what makes the movie so good is like, I want Alan Rickman and Emma Thompson to work out, but it's just not in the cards, and that's realistic. I mean, it has the ones for everyone who's the romantics, it has the endings for them, and it has the ones for everyone who's the realists, which, I mean, why rail against something that gives you both?
Well, it's also, I wonder if things might have gone different if there'd been a slight tweak to the screenplay, and maybe the fact that there wasn't is the key to why she chose her family over her romantic relationship. Because when she's in, getting it on with Rodrigo Santoro, who was in, I think he was in 300, like the same year, like right around the same
Yeah.
time, playing
Because he was still
Xerxes.
jacked, I think, right? From doing that shirtless moment or whatever, calling the armies. Yeah.
Yeah, but when they're in bed, they're about to get it on, and the phone rings, and he says something like, "What if you just didn't answer?"
Hmm.
I wonder if that was some kind of a clue, like, I really want something to happen with this guy, but if he can't deal with this, how is he gonna deal with being in a relationship with me where I'm gonna be taking care of my brother for 20 years? Is he gonna end up, like, jealous or nagging me or being disapproving of what I have as a familial obligation? If he had just said, "Can I give you a ride to the hospital?" or, whatever, if it had been
Right.
kind of a different thing.
Yeah, I think that's a great way of putting it. There's a lot of those moments where you can kind of debate, which I mean, I'm sure that's what Richard Curtis wanted. I mean, there's so many debatable moments here. I found out actually in my research, I've always been under the impression of, I wonder if Alan Rickman went all the way with his assistant. Obviously, everything he did was terrible. Emma Thompson had 100% right to be angry with him, to divorce him, whatever, all that stuff. I know she stayed with him for the family. But I've always have been wondering, like, oh, I wonder if he went all the way, if it was a kiss, the dance at the work party. And Richard Curtis's wife, the script editor, went on Twitter one day because someone asked her that, and she's like, "Oh no, I begged him to have it be just a kiss, but he says they went all the way," and which makes it even more heartbreaking that that kiss at the end when they're at the airport, seeing each other again for the kids' sake, they're together, but you can tell together they are just broken.
Oh, yeah, when she just says, "Home, let's go home," and then she leaves with the kids and he's trailing behind all sheepdog. Um, yeah, that's disappointing. Just the way that she confronts him afterwards after the school concert, and she's like, "What if you were me and you're just wondering, was it a kiss and a necklace or sex and a necklace?" When she opens up the Joni Mitchell CD at Christmas,
Yep.
because it's in the exact same shaped box as what he had given, the necklace he had given to his secretary mistress. It's just the look on her face. I still get there's several points in this movie that I get chills when I watch it, when I think about it, certainly when I talk about it. I don't know if the camera is picking it up. I'm getting a little pink around the eyes. Not for that reason. Um, but yeah, it's again, this is something that bothers me about these critiques of this movie. Not to say that you can't critique a movie, but to come down on it so hard through a lens that it does not deserve. Part of this thread on Twitter that I was reading were several people jumping in and saying, "Well, thank you, because I always had my suspicions about this movie, and now I'm never going to watch it." Or,
Oh,
"Thanks for saving me 2 hours." Or, "I always knew there was something screwy about that movie. My friends told me not to watch it, so I didn't, and you've reaffirmed it." I feel like people are missing out.
yeah, I think so too. I mean, just for the fact of the scene you mentioned, I think it's really sort of the biggest triumph of the movie. It's like a wide shot of Emma Thompson in a bedroom with Joni Mitchell playing, and it's like the most heartbreaking scene. Not even in just this movie. I mean, it's in like all of cinema, and you feel so bad for her. She's going through every emotion. She's crying. It's so realistic, and then as many women have to do, as many moms have to do, and even some men though, she has to like suck it up, wipe away the tears, and
Oh,
go be a mom to her kids who are really excited about a show they have to go to, and hide from her husband the fact that she knows now. It's just like so layered, and I know this is just kind of some people would say like a silly rom-com, silly Christmas movie, but when that scene hits though, it's just so powerful. And she's so good in this movie and in every movie. But yeah, that's just one of those moments where how can you knock this movie for that storyline specifically? Because she's just so great.
and then when she runs into David, is she is he her older brother?
I know they're brother and sister. Actually, I'm gonna have to double check the
Because I
dialogue, but I know they're brother and sister.
because I feel like she said at one point, like, when your older brother is, on TV saving the world, kind of puts your life into stark relief. I'm like, I don't know what reality it works where she's the, the younger sister. But no, but when she runs into him at the school, it's a complete surprise. When she hugs him, she grips him
Yes,
because
yeah.
she's just had this moment at home, and you can just tell she wants so much to tell him what's going on or be comforted the way that she's been a comfort to other people in her life. That, damn it. All right, we got to move
I
on.
yes, but no, I agree with you. I think there's so many little things like that here where a lot of these actors are all stars. Like you said, like the Avengers, and a simple hug to Hugh Grant could have just been like, "Oh, it's so nice to see you, David. The kids are in the show. Oh, I'm sorry, I got to go hide. I'll be in the back, or whatever." But like you said, just that small extra grip on the hug, and that's all you need to know. Like, and then he even kind of reacts too, like, "Oh, I wonder what is she going through?" And it's just like and he's the most powerful man in that country, so it's just kind of a great moment there. And I think people forget about that too. Like everything is so intertwined, but like you kind of forget some of the dynamics of the people until the end of the movie, and you're like, oh yeah, that actually had a lot more weight to it now that I think about it.
I will say I think I have one plot hole, and it might be resolved by the possibility that this one character is actually twins. Um,
Oh, I know
the
I think I know what you're gonna say.
Colin's friend. I can't remember his name.
Yep.
But he is at the wedding reception that Colin is catering for Keira Knightley and Chiwetel Ejiofor. I mean, just the fact that Chiwetel Ejiofor is in this movie, and also Andrew Lincoln, years before The Walking Dead, it's just so strange.
It is,
But
and no beard and no sweat coming out.
but there is a character named Carl in the movie, and the fact that they didn't interact so that Andrew Lincoln could just go, Carl!
I know. I was like waiting for it to happen. Every time I watch it now, I'm always waiting for it to happen.
But no, so they're hanging out at the reception, and that's when Colin says, I'm going to go to America. And then they cut to Jack and Judy on the set, and that's when the friend comes in, and he's the one who says, if you could just like adjust the nipples, or we got to get a light reading or something. I'm like, it felt like all of this was taking place simultaneously, but then I'm like, how is this guy in two places at once unless they're twins?
Yeah, I always kind of thought about that too. I have a feeling, it's probably a victim of bad editing, not bad editing, but just editing. Because when you think about all the different storylines and footage they had to shoot, and trying to weave in, now we're in an up area, now we're in a downer, now we're in a romance, now we're in a comedy. It probably worked best to like put those scenes in that order. Because I've always thought that too. I'm like, yeah, is he a twin? Does he have two jobs? Is he, an AD or a PA on this one thing and working over here with Colin? But it must be the editing, because or he's a time traveler. I don't know.
There you go. That's the one. That's the one celebrity cameo we didn't get in Love Actually, is Doctor Who.
That's right.
But I will say, to kind of close this out, and then we'll talk about your wonderful book. I love that this is a time capsule of 2003,
Mm-hmm.
not just because of 9/11 or Hugh Grant or any of that stuff, but it's when Colin gets to Wisconsin, he goes into that bar.
Yeah.
And he runs into, I mean, Alicia Cuthbert,
Yep.
January Jones, Elizabeth, Shannon Elizabeth,
Mm-hmm.
and oh my gosh, who was the last one? Oh, Denise Richards. She
Denise
comes in later,
Richards.
right?
Yep.
Who is the girl that he first meets in the bar? Because I don't feel like I know who she is.
She's been in a lot of stuff before. She was a model, and she's been in a lot of TV shows. I'm trying to remember her name oh man, yeah, January Jones.
But
It'll come to me. It'll come to me.
But it's almost like the FHM cover girls of like the last 3 years were in this as cameos in this movie. And it's just, again, it's a perfect time capsule, because like, oh my gosh, whatever happened to ...
Well, yeah, and it's just like so fantastical too. I think like every rom-com has that moment, or most of the comedic ones do. One of my favorites is 13 Going on 30, and it's like there's a magic house and she turns 13 again, and it's like I hate that movie because it's not reality. It's like it's just a rom-com. but yeah, no, I love that whole exchange with them, and let's not forget too, like I never got it at the time until I got older, but the Bill Nye storyline, sort of the bromance between manager and artists, and just like at the end when he's like how about we get pissed and watch porn? He's like, what did he say? Is like I could have been at Elton John's with models or whatever, but then I wanted to be here with you. And he does like this thing like,
oh yeah,
I can't do it justice. But anyway, I love that storyline too, just because you don't think about it until you get older, and you're like, man, after everything that I've gone through and all these, if you're a celebrity, all these fake people that kind of are in my circle, this guy's been here, the entire time. Like, I want to spend the holiday with you, which I find, endearing. Ivana Milosevic, I think that's her name. But yeah, she was in Paycheck with Ben Affleck, and the 100 TV show, and a couple other things. But anyway.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the Billy Mack storyline, the Bill Nye, because that's sort of the almost the way into the movie, because we kind of open up after the airport scene with him recording again. Love Is All Around. That was from was that Four Weddings and a Funeral, right? The big Hugh Grant movie.
Yes,
I think that was the anthem from like 1994, but they've turned it into Christmas. And they're commercializing it. It's the perfect way into this movie. But when he's talking to his manager at the end, and his manager tears up, he's like, it's been an honor. It's a real bromance. It's a real friendship. And again, I'm watching this actor. The actor, I don't know who he is. The guy who plays the fat slovenly manager, as he is referred to. It's perfect. Like he doesn't have to be a name actor. But he has the same chops as everybody else in that billing. Um, but okay, Rom-Com Ultimate Trivia Book.
Mhm.
Once again, you wrote a really fun intro, a very personal intro to the book, talking about your love of rom-coms and how you've always found the term chick flick kind of dismissive and unfair because, anybody can love these movies. And I tend to agree. I am guilty of using that shorthand, I'll just say. But
Oh yeah, yeah.
yeah.
It's become
Um,
part of the lexicon, right? So
but also, again, you've got it's not just trivia, they're quizzes. You can get points. You have different chapters based on genres. You've got sub quizzes and all this. It's very fun stuff going in. And I love the factoids. I mean, you not factoids, because factoids are not just little facts; they are little facts that are often untrue. But the little facts that you have sprinkled throughout the book are so much fun. Like I think my favorite example, and I'm not going to spoil anymore. I'll just give the one. But Can't Hardly Wait, a movie that I love.
me
That's
too.
in my
Yeah.
sweet spot, right?
Hmm.
Was it the writer or the director had said that the whole premise of that movie is, what if we never left the house party from Say Anything? I read that this morning and like light bulbs started like popping off in my head. I'm like, that explains so much. It's perfect.
I'd love. There's so many facts that I didn't get a chance to include. I mean, I still have pages and pages, like especially for Love Actually. I can give a few before we're done today, but yeah, with Can't Hardly Wait, like I loved that fact. Another one I didn't include is the movie was originally supposed to be R, which you can kind of tell, like they could have gone harder in certain areas, and they ended up later in the edit being told like, hey, we got to go PG-13, and so when Jennifer Love Hewitt makes her grand entrance to the party, which I think is to the Sneaker Pimps song.
Mm.
um, there's someone in the background of her by the door who is holding a balloon or something like a balloon. Originally, it was a guy doing a beer bong, but they didn't have a chance to reshoot it, so they had to use early CGI at that time and spend a lot of money to turn it into a guy with a balloon because they didn't want to have the R rating with him, drinking beer out of a bong.
It's weird that that would get you an R rating, but having what I'll call a casual N bomb at the end,
Oh my god, yeah,
PG-13 in what was it, 1999 or 2000, whatever that was.
yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I don't understand the MPAA at all. But okay, in doing your research for this book, you watched a bunch of rom-coms, you dug deep, you made up all these questions. The illustrations, I think even more so than the previous book, are on point. I mean, there's so many great portraits and little spot illustrations in here. Those are a lot of fun. I know you didn't draw those, but give me a shout out to your illustrator.
Yeah, it's Matt Edwards, and Matt Edwards does most of the trivia books that the publisher Cordo and Epic Inc. Publish, and it just does a great job of I don't know, just a great vibe and great style all throughout, and especially with like some of the iconic images that we all know and love, making sure he hits the right balance and everything.
But in putting together the book and watching all these movies fresh, kind of going back to our Love Actually conversation, did anything hit differently when you were watching? Like, oh, I watched Say Anything, when it first came out, and I'm watching it for the third or fourth time and taking notes on it. Does it still hit? Are you like, oh, this movie isn't that great? Were there not necessarily that example specifically, but examples like that?
There was a few. I'm trying to think off the top of my head because there's so many movies. Same thing with the Christmas book. I put a little writing desk in the living room and we watched 3, 4, 5 movies a day together, my wife and I. Some of them, I don't want to say anything bad, but some of them were surprises. Some of them because I hadn't seen them or I hadn't seen them in a long time. I really liked Love, Simon. I thought that was such a sweet movie and sort of nod to John Hughes, and I had never seen But I'm a Cheerleader, which I thought was so unique and well made and just a great indie movie, especially like the subtext and what it talked about. When I rewatched My Best Friend's Wedding, that was one Colleen and I both were like, I don't know, like Julia Roberts isn't the best person in this movie, and she's really trying hard to ruin her best friend's job and his marriage, and this young woman, even though she might be slightly younger, in society standards, kind of like ruining her engagement and everything. And so that one was one I was like, I don't know if this one is, it holds up as like, I should say it holds up, but I don't know if I want to root for Julia Roberts in that movie. And I found out that the end of that movie, when they go to the wedding, originally John Corbett from Sex and the City was going to appear at the wedding. They were going to flirt, and then she was going to have like her new man that she was going to date. And so that was the ending. So they did test screenings. The audiences booed because they're like, Julia Roberts' character does not deserve love after what she did to her friend. Change the ending. So if you watch the movie now, when Rupert Everett is on the cell phone and he's like, hey, I came here special, we're going to dance and all that kind of stuff. Her hair looks different because she was filming another movie. She had a pixie cut, so they had to put a wig on her to reshoot those final few scenes, which also happened in Pretty in Pink. Originally, it was going to be Ducky, who was going to end up with Molly Ringwald. Audiences booed; they hated it, so they rewrote it. Yeah, did you know that?
No, I don't.
Yeah,
I don't think I did. Wow.
Yeah, so originally it was going to be she was going to end up with Ducky. They filmed that ending, and another fact too is originally Ducky, Molly Ringwald wanted Robert Downey Jr., but they ended up going with John Cryer. And
Good
so yeah,
move. I can't see that at all.
yeah. So she was going to end up with Ducky, and audiences hated it, and so John Hughes had to rewrite the script. They went back and shot it. Andrew McCarthy had like a shaved head at the time, or really short haircut. He's wearing a wig in the final scenes of that movie. And they had to redo it. Everyone liked the new ending. And then Howard Deutsch, the director of Pretty in Pink, who's married to Leah Thompson, he really wanted it to be Ducky with Molly Ringwald, and so he made the movie Some Kind of Wonderful as a gender swapped version of Pretty in Pink with the right ending, and so that's what Some Kind of Wonderful is.
I think I knew that part because I talked to Zoe Deutsch, their daughter, who's an
Oh,
actress.
amazing! She's great.
Yeah, but the whole Ducky thing, it's strange, and this is kind of, I guess, off topic, but nowadays that's kind of the meme is like, oh, she should have ended up with Ducky. So I don't know if it's like the early '80s where people are like, yeah, you got to go for the the pretty boy rich kid. That's how it works. But yeah, I can't imagine anybody saying, you got to end up with Blaine because again, it's a major appliance. That's not a name.
Yeah, exactly. And that was an improv that John Cryer said on the day too, and it stuck. So,
Damn it. Talented little bastard. Okay, so back to the book.
but yeah, I think other movies though, a lot of them I'd seen so much. I think those were two great examples. Just kind of looking through the index here. It made me fall in love again with all of Nancy Meyer's movies. She does such a great job with her production design, and all of her actors in her movies are so good. Made me, just continually love Nora Ephron. What a great writer. Really loved Brown Sugar. That's one of my favorites. Great soundtrack, hip hop soundtrack. One of the first movies to film after 9/11. I know we were talking about it earlier. But there's so many. I mean, there was 20 movies or so that I did full quizzes for that were actually cut. It was going to be 12 chapters, and we ended up cutting a lot. So hopefully we'll get a sequel. But there are some great ones that I put in there that maybe aren't seen as much, like Defending Your Life with Albert Brooks. I'm a big fan of Meryl
Oh
Streep.
yeah.
There was Only You with Robert Downey Jr. and Marissa Tomei, just some ones that weren't super popular. So I'm hoping to get a chance to throw some of those in the sequel, because I could do this all day. Like I just watch rom-coms, as much as possible. So
Defending Your Life is that is one of my favorite films of all time. It's beautiful. Just generally a big Albert Brooks fan, so I can't go wrong there.
yeah,
But one of the things I thought was really clever is you've got sort of like or very similar to what you did in the Christmas book. Here you've got a meter as far as like, is this a romantic movie? Is it a comedy? Is it a rom-com? That kind of sweet spot in the middle. But one thing I didn't quite catch, was there any movie that's pure romance in here or just pure comedy? Because it seemed like everything was somewhere on the spectrum, but I don't remember if anything made it to the tippy top or the basement.
yeah. I think for pure comedy, a couple ones that got cut, as I said, I had the 40-Year-Old Virgin was in there, which I think is kind of pure comedy, really. I mean, it has romance in it. And I think Coming to America might have been pure comedy, because what I did with the Rom-Cometer is I pulled a ton of people, like followers, friends, family, all that kind of stuff. And so it's a user generated rating system. So like I think maybe 150 people voted on it. And so some of them were pretty surprising, and like maybe I wouldn't have agreed with it, but I wanted to open it up to have people kind of vote on it. And Some of them I think were spot on, like When Harry Met Sally kind of being like right in the middle. Other ones, being slightly more romantic, like a Serendipity. But I'm not sure if any of them were fully romance. I think Coming to America though was fully comedy. The last time I checked, but yeah.
Well, I just like that. I think you explain this in either the intro or when you're kind of laying out some of the quiz rules about how there are certain movies that you don't think of necessarily of as rom-coms, and part of your criterion was if you can take the romance out of the movie and it still functions as a comedy. Because there are movies that have romantic subplots, but they're not kind of the thrust of the narrative. I just like that distinction, that degree of detail and thinking about these movies and taking them seriously is again something you don't get from. I mean, you're not writing gag books or novelty books. I mean, these are actual experiences.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I use the example of Legally Blonde. I included it because a lot of people consider it a rom-com. I don't, but I also there's a lot of movies in here that I put in because history has said that they're a rom-com to some people. But with Legally Blonde, if you take out the romance with Luke Wilson, it's about Elle finding who she is, being confident enough to go to law school, becoming a lawyer, winning a case. She doesn't need a guy to feel better about herself. That it has nothing to do with the plot, other than getting broken up with in the beginning of the movie. And like you said, in most comedies, or really any movie, I mean, the whole boy meets girl, girl and boy fall in love, girl and boy break up, boy and girl get back together or don't get back together. I mean, that's really the crux of every movie. But with rom-coms specifically and comedy specifically, usually the romance is like the B plot. And rom-coms, it's the A plot. Like, Tom Hanks is destined to find Meg Ryan in Sleepless in Seattle, or John Cusack and Kate Beckinsale. Like, if you don't have that, then it's just a weird movie about a guy who's leaving his fiance and a girl who's leaving her boyfriend. So it's different. So like you said, I think the criteria, you can use that for different movies. And every movie is going to have a little bit of a relationship. But like I said, is it the B plot? Can it leave? Like 40-Year-Old Virgin, I know I mentioned, it's basically a comedy. If you don't have Catherine Keener in there, it's about a guy who lost his virginity and realized he didn't need all these toys and he could live a fulfilled life. He didn't have to lose his virginity. So you don't need Catherine Keener in that movie, really. It's someone who's kind of coming out of his shell and being socially awkward. So I think it's fun to kind of think of movies that way. And it would be an interesting experiment for people to go through this book or their favorite rom-coms and say, I wonder what would happen if I took out the love story. What would change? If it completely ruins the movie, then it's probably a rom-com.
It's weird because I Crazy Stupid Love, if I recall, that scored kind of lower on the romance and that leaned more towards comedy. I haven't watched that movie in a long time, but I remember loving it.
It's really
But yeah,
funny.
it is. It's great. Ryan Gosling, it's funny because he's got these very serious roles, but then he'll do Ken or he'll do Crazy Stupid Love. He has it all. He does it all. Damn it.
Yeah, I
Um,
know. I know. My favorite's The Nice Guys that he's in. I think he's so good in that movie.
I think he was good in that movie. I didn't like The Nice Guys. But
Yeah.
I might have been half awake when I watched it, so that's not fair to the film.
He's just, I think it's just echoing what you said. I think he's, after seeing The Notebook, you're like, oh, I don't know if this guy could do like comedy, but he's got really good instincts. And in Crazy Stupid Love, very, very good in that movie. And actually I'm trying to think of a fun thing that I don't think I put in the book. When they're doing the Dirty Dancing lift, speaking of Swayze, I was going to put this in there because of the first book, but they didn't keep it in. Um, Basically, Emma Stone is very afraid of heights and of being lifted, and so they did the scene initially, and she got so freaked out being up in the air that she kind of like clawed her arms and like scratched him a ton. And he said it was like trying to hold a raccoon up in the air, and so she kind of freaked out. Then they had to kind of calm her down a little bit, and then they had someone else do the actual lift. And Ryan Gosling, the reason it's in the movie is he said to the directors, "Oh, I've done this thing before," kind of flippantly, and they're like, "Oh, well, we're going to put it in the movie," and he's like, "Oh, no, no, don't," and then they did. So yeah.
Wow. Um, Man, no, I'm just I was reminded of something when you were talking about your experience of watching Love Actually for the first time in that dorm with all those guys. Was there a Notebook experience similar to that?
I'm trying
You
to
ever
think.
you ever watch The Notebook with like dudes and just like see who doesn't break? Because
Oh, that's a hard one not to break to. I mean, yeah, I don't think I have, but I'm thinking about it now. I mean, maybe that's a good experiment. Because it's one of those movies, the classic trope of love triangle, right? You have the James Marsden character. Is she better off with him? Is she better off with Ryan Gosling? And if I remember correctly, though, I think that's one of the movies like Sleepless in Seattle, like You've Got Mail, which I guess it's Nora Ephron. Obviously, she's a great writer, but where we talked about this in the Santa Claus, where the foil, if you want to call it that, or the person that the lead character doesn't end up with isn't a bad person. They're just not right for each other. And so I think that was what the deal with James Marsden, right? That he wasn't like a terrible guy.
I don't remember. I'll take your word for it because I've only seen The Notebook once.
Okay, and that
I
was enough, right? Because then it was still too saddening.
it was I mean, I own it
Yep.
so that someday I can pull it off the shelf, but I'm just not ready. I mean, and we're talking like 20 years ago or whenever it came out on home video. It was a situation I was with my wife and some of her friends and their boyfriends slash husbands, and they're like, "Let's put on The Notebook," and all the guys like, "Ugh." We were all enraptured and blowing our noses and wiping away red eyes by the time that movie was over because damn it, that thing is effective.
It is. Yeah.
So I don't know. I can't tell you about James Marsden. I think before you mentioned him, I forgot he was in the movie.
Yeah.
Jesus. But yeah. So I guess was there a movie that you kind of fell in love with in putting this book together? Because when you're doing stuff, when you're researching for the book, as you mentioned, you're watching several movies a day, you're taking notes. It's kind of almost like you almost be desensitized to it, I would imagine. But was there something where you sat down and you're like, nope, this still does it for me. I could be researching or even if it's the fifth movie of the day, this still hits me right in the sweet spot.
Yeah, I think, I'm just going to kind of go through the different tropes here and pick a few. I think 27 Dresses is fairly special. I know it's kind of a throwaway one for some people, but it reminds me of my wife and I because, when we started dating, I was very like, oh, what's the point of getting married? And it's, commercial and this. And I was very much the James Marsden's character. She was very much Katherine Heigl's character. She had done, 12, 13 weddings as a bridesmaid. And it kind of hits home. So that one, I love watching. 13 Going on 30 just has so much charm to it. Jennifer Garner, it's probably, I think, like her best role. She's so good in it. And I really love the way that one continues and continues to impress. I'm a huge sucker for teen romances, teen comedies. So, 10 Things I Hate About You still hits really well.
Wait, Neal, just I want to pull over. Do you realize what you've just confessed to?
What?
You love rom-coms that involve numbers.
Oh, yeah.
27 Dresses, 13 Going on 30, and 10 Things I Hate About You.
That's
What's
really
going on
funny,
here,
actually.
man?
Yeah, I know. I don't know what's going on there. I feel like it's maybe it's like a secret Fibonacci sequence or something that I don't know about. But
Next thing you're
um,
going to say is she's the one. No.
yeah, I know, right? Yeah, and I think I could go on and on about different ones that hit me, but Midnight in Paris, really love that movie. It's I think that one hits me. Yeah, I should say that one hits me really well every time because it's so inspiring. It's about a guy who, wants to write what he loves. He's stuck doing something he doesn't want to do to make money, writing studio movies, and he just wants to walk around Paris in the rain and write, the books that he wants to write. And the city is just so beautiful in that movie. The idea of going back into a different time, being nostalgic and living in a different lifetime that you think is right for you when, you should kind of grab hold of the present. But yeah, just that one never gets old for me. It's just the cinematography by Darius Kanji is beautiful, and Owen Wilson is really, really good, and so is Marion Cotillard. So
Did
yeah.
that movie, I had a legitimate 2001 Space Odyssey, like Stargate moment watching that film the first time I saw it in a theater because I was a big fan of Woody Allen's comedy album Stand Up Comic from 1969.
Mhm.
Have you ever heard it?
I've never heard it. No.
It's probably on YouTube somewhere. You can listen to it. It's absurdist. It's great. But he does a bit, and it's an extended bit, which is essentially the setup for Midnight in Paris, which he made like what 30 plus years afterwards. So it is about him going into a bar and kind of encountering all these great literary figures. And the setup is like he's just going into a bar, but the punchlines are, oh, this was Ernest Hemingway. Oh, this was,
Oh,
such
that's
and
funny.
such. And so I'm watching this movie, and Owen Wilson is just this frustrated writer, and then he happens to go into a bar and like, Oh my God, he's doing a punchline to a stand-up comedy routine he did, back in the 60s. I can't believe I'm watching this. I'm totally here for it.
That's really funny. And the two things I know about that movie that weren't included in the book that I really love is Owen Wilson arrived to set one day, and Tom Hiddleston, who plays F. Scott Fitzgerald, was kind of like, "Hey, it's so great to see you, man. I'm glad we're going to be working today. But why aren't you in wardrobe?" And he's like, "What are you talking about?" He's like, "You aren't in wardrobe. All these extras here, we're all ready to go. It's 1928, whatever it is, 1920s." And he goes, are you sure you know what you're talking about? And he's like, what do you mean? And he's like, I'm from modern time. And he goes, oh, I didn't get all the pages of the script. I assumed this was a 1920s movie. And so I thought that was really funny. And then my other favorite fact is Woody Allen originally developed this movie for Cary Grant because Cary Grant wanted to work with him. He, came up with this idea. Cary Grant came to the bar that he played clarinet at with jazz, and they had this huge conversation about it. And then when Woody Allen kind of followed up on it, it's like, all right, I'm going to go to, his agents and figure this out. It just never really worked out. And Cary Grant was much older at the time too, but
Yeah.
could have been Cary Grant. So yeah.
Wow. Well, I'm glad it was Owen Wilson because he's, yeah, as you mentioned, he's spot on in this movie. Um, cool. Well, any other, I guess. Oh, you said that you've got some other Love Actually
Oh
facts
yeah.
or trivia. Close out with that. We'll finish big.
Yeah, I'll close out some Love Actually facts. So let's see. The first one. So during the scene when Aurelia and Colin Firth's character are sort of at the French writing area or whatever you want to call it, and all of his pages go in the water. She dives in. He dives in after her, and they're kind of like drowning and swimming, and they get soaked. So the fun part about that is, first of all, when she takes off her outfit to jump in and he sees the back tattoo and her bikini or her underwear, the production team and the costume team, they had a 45-minute debate about what color her underwear set should be. What would come off too scandalous, what wouldn't be, romantic enough. And that's what they settled on. So that was the first fact of that. The second one is they're actually only in 18 inches of water. So if you really watch it closely, they're on their knee, they're trying to lay back to not show that it's not deep at all. And the water was freezing. And Colin Farrell actually got bit by some sort of bug or creature. And during production, his elbow swelled to like the size of a golf ball because he got bit by something underwater. So I thought that was kind of a fun fact about that movie.
Maybe it was one of the eels they were trying to avoid.
Yeah, I know. I was thinking of that too. A couple of the other things that I like is when they were casting Sarah, the Laura Linney character. Every time they kept seeing tapes or auditioning British actresses, Richard Curtis kept saying, "No, I want someone like Laura Linney. I want someone like Laura Linney." And then the casting director was like, "Why don't you just get Laura Linney then?" And he's like, "Oh." And so they sent her the script, and she loved it. And the reason he loved her was her movie, "You Can Count on Me." So that was one of the reasons that he wanted to cast her. And then another fun one, just a really small Easter egg, is during Liam Neeson's wife passing away. They're at the funeral, and he plays the Bay City Rollers. All the pictures of Joanne at the beginning of the film are actually a British documentarian and screenwriter named Rebecca Frayne, who Richard Curtis himself had a crush on, but it never worked out. So I thought it was kind of like a funny. I wonder, is he like Mark and Juliet in the movie? Is that where that comes from? Like he had a crush on this person and it never matriculated. So yeah, I thought that was kind of a fun thing as well.
Wow. So yeah, now I'm reframing this entire thing. It was maybe this is a weird love letter to what might have been.
Yeah,
Man. But you mentioned that Richard Curtis is, I will assume, I'll hope, happily married. So it worked out in some fashion.
yeah.
Well, Neil, and this conversation worked out. I'm glad we got to talk about Love Actually and your lovely books. They're available at fine bookstores anywhere, everywhere. Oh, one thing I don't want to keep you too long because I know you've got tons of other things to do, including working on another book. Stop, just stop. No, don't stop, please. Uh, Promoting this thing. You've been everywhere, like
Yeah,
doing all sorts of fun stuff. What's the coolest thing that you've done to promote the Rom-Com Ultimate Trivia Book?
that's a great question. I think the coolest thing, well, I've been, producing some TikToks for some brands, and I got a chance to meet some really smart and fun content creators who, make TikToks for a living for different brands. And I was able to take them with me to New York because it's sort of the rom-com mecca. All the big rom-coms are filmed there and they take place there. And so we just went to all these famous locations. And one of my favorite things to do when traveling is finding film locations and kind of imagining as a director, like, oh, I wonder like where the craft services would have been, like how hard would have been to shoot here, shut down the street, and like this is the house, this is where did they light it from. And it was great getting to go to those locations, talk about some facts that that I knew from the book that maybe weren't included in the book, but hopefully would interest people enough to check out the book. And so that was fun. Anytime I get to go to New York is always fun, but especially like specifically to check out rom-com locations and tell them too, because they weren't super familiar with a lot of the rom-coms, like, oh, this is where this happened, or we're at Zabar's, a famous deli in on the Upper West Side. This is where they filmed You've Got Mail, and it was the only movie at the time that was allowed to film on the inside, and all that kind of stuff. So it's just really fun to do that. And actually, speaking of our last episode, many contestants and friends that I made on the floor live in New York, and they all came and helped me out and did some
Oh,
videos with
wow.
me, which is really cool.
That is great, man. Well, again, thank you for hanging out and talking about this great movie, these great books. I can't wait to read whatever you've got coming up next. I kind of know what that is, but I'm not going to say anything because I don't know what the whole deal is. But
I can tell you the
very
next
cool.
three that maybe you didn't know. They're more kids books though. They're for ages 10 to 13. It's called the Totally Awesome series. There's one on Steph Curry, there's one on Mr. Beast, and one on Cristiano Ronaldo. Those are available to pre-order now if you have kids or want them to learn about those people. So
Cool. Well, definitely. Congratulations on that. But we won't be talking about those because I don't think they've made movies yet.
yeah, right.
Um,
yeah.
yeah. There might be a movie about Mr. Beast coming up, but I don't know. I don't know how that would work out.
Yeah, I don't think it's bend it like Ronaldo, so we can't really talk about that. Yeah.
All right, man. Well, thanks again, Neal Fischer. Again, where can folks find your stuff?
Yeah, you can go to my website, nealefisher.com. It's the spelling that you see on the screen. I'm at Neal E. Fisher on social media. I host a weekly pub trivia style game show podcast called Trivialities. You can find us on any of your favorite podcast apps. And I have a new podcast called Curated by Chance with my friend Lauren, who's an art curator. You can check out that podcast as well. And if you don't, have enough of me with the books in this interview, you can listen to me yammer on about movies or trivia and things like that.
Excellent. All right, sir. Well, thanks again. Congratulations. And I'm going to raise a glass to love.
Yeah, likewise.
All right. Wait. Hold on. We got to cheers. Ting.
Ching.
All right. Yeah.
As Alan Rickman said, I was the classic fool. I drank before we cheers.
Oh, that line, a classic fool. Oh,
yeah.
I felt bad for him, but then again, I didn't. Yeah, again, it's complicated.
yeah.
Which is another rom-com. All right, man. Thanks. Take care. And yeah, folks out there, all of Neal's info is down below. Definitely order the book. You're not going to regret it. Read it with someone you love. Read it with all the people you love, those in your life that you could make a rom-com with or about. But yeah, till next time, whenever that is, whatever that is, thank you very much and take care.